I talk about publicness, and it's not the opposite of privacy. Privacy and publicness are like hot and cold. We need both. We need protection for privacy. Privacy is very important. But my fear is that we talk so much about privacy these days and pay so much attention to that, we might lose sight of the benefits of publicness. These tools you're using right now, the internet itself, is a grand tool of publicness that allows people to speak and to organize and to do all kinds of things on their own. And if we limit it too much because we're too scared of what it could do, then we may not see the best things it can do. Media was a tool of publicness itself, right? And there are those who think that it kind of corrupted our view of publicness. So media absolutely should have a role in publicness. It should have a role in protecting these tools because it should learn how to act collaboratively with the public now that everyone in the public can also publish and broadcast. I think that media are just learning about this. And we've seen a lot of advances. We see newspapers are blogging and using Twitter and collaborating with the public and so on. But it's actually a fairly slow progression here. I think we used to believe, or I used to believe until recently, that this change we were going through was extremely fast. I wonder now whether it's actually slow and we're just at the beginning of it. To hearken back to Gutenberg, Elizabeth Eisenstein, who's the key Gutenberg scholar, says that the book did not begin to take on its own form until 50 years after it was invented. At first it used scribal fonts. It was called automated handwriting. And it took a long time. Well, if you look at how newspapers and magazines and TV stations are using computers, the web, and especially tablets, they're trying to recognizably recreate their forms there. They're using scribal fonts still. We haven't really, I think, reinvented what media can be all about with these new tools. Key to that reinvention is that content is not something that one person controls anymore. Much of it's going to be collaborated on. It's going to be mixed around and distributed through links and changed and added to by people. So if media are going to believe in publicness, it means working with the public. I think they're trying to recreate everything they knew. Their forms, their control, their business models, their role in this world, and it's very hard. It's understandably very difficult to realize that this extreme control you had because you owned the printing press is now distributed. And this printing press that you owned also gave you a very profitable business and a very large business. Now, I believe that new forms of media can be sustainable and profitable. That's why I teach entrepreneurial journalism here at CUNY. But I don't think we're going to find the behemoth big media companies we had before because no one can control the resources they controlled. No, but I don't blame them for that because I don't know what the role is yet. I think that we are just beginning to see the possibilities and the opportunities. If you look at something like Foursquare being out there and knowing where all its users are, could we in media suddenly find witnesses on our own and have them take on assignments about news stories? Things like that don't exist today. Do we rethink the form of news and retell it not as one serial piece that Gutenberg brought us to, but instead as separate assets that you can link to in various ways for various people? Let's say you have, the article begins with what's new, and then what this story is about, and then the background, and then details, and then summary, right? That's one piece. What if you separated those out? Why do we retype the background paragraph every time? The background paragraph online properly should be a link. Right? And in fact, we don't necessarily have to do it. Maybe Wikipedia does the best background. So you can come to a story and say, I know what's going on here, just give me what's new. Or you can come to a story and say, I want what's new, but I also don't understand, I want the background. And then I want to get some idea of who the players are, and then I want to know where the times are and the places are, and then I want to come back to what's happening now in the details, right? So you can have the same assets of news with different flows through them, and it may not be the same for everyone. So that's just one example of how we can rethink the very form of news. I think so. I think that's the opportunity. In print and broadcast, we had to be one size fits all. We had to be the same for everyone because that's what the form required. Well, that's no longer the case. And I think we developed a myth that one size fits all news was better. When I get the newspaper every day, I don't like sports. I throw out the sports section. And I still do get newspapers. And it's wasted on me. It's noise for me. Right? So getting to a point where we have more relevance, I think media have to go there where they see themselves as a database of assets and knowledge and information and a platform for people to share information. And then the journalists have to ask, how do we add value to that? Economically, the more we can set up platforms so that communities can share what they know on their own, the better off we're going to be. This is more discussion in America, I think, than anywhere else. Because of our distances and because of the advent of TV, we ended up with a lot of one newspaper towns where you had the same product serving everybody. And yes, there was a commonality to that, but there was also boredom to that. Contrast that with, let's say, the German market, where you have long had strong national voices in media. So you can read Der Spiegel versus the Süddeutsche versus Welt, whatever you want, right? And you get different perspectives on the news. And you don't have to read them all, but you can. You have the options. That wasn't the case in the U.S. If you lived in Cleveland for many, many years now, you've had just one newspaper. Well, now we're going, I think, back to a more natural state of media and the public, where we have many options, many voices. Democracy, properly, is not a single monolithic voice of one publication controlled at the center. Democracy, properly, is a cacophony of voices. And it's a little hard for us to get used to that noise right now. There's a wonderful video online right now of a young woman who was deaf since birth, and she got an implant, and the moment when her implant is turned on and she suddenly hears the world and she cries because it was so wonderful and unsettling. Well, it's a metaphor for what we're going through online right now. Suddenly, you're hearing the voices of the people again, not just the voice of singular media.